Yo, it's your boy CTB, back again with another video, and today we got the top 10 most overrated beatbox sounds. Now, before I get started, I just want to say that when I talk about what I think to be a overrated sound, I believe that those sounds are sounds that not necessarily are the most popular sounds, but also sounds that are just used in a way that is typically really trendy. So instead of necessarily the sound itself being the source of its overratedness, it's how that sound is used. So as you're going to see later on in this list, as we go higher and higher up, you're going to see sounds that are quite popular, but are also used the same. And you're going to see sounds that are possibly popular, but there are, a good amount of variations and differences in how a lot of people use them in the scene, a bit lower on the list. But there's an overall sense of kind of just this is the sound that everyone is including in their sound sets right now, in their routines and in their drops and things like that. So let's get right into it. At number 10, we have vibration bass. So vibration bass is a sound that I'd say definitely started gaining popularity. I'll say roughly 3 to 5 years ago, especially in like the TeamSpeak scene and things like that. And then it kind of started to trickle into some of the live scene, but not very often. There's not a lot of people that are known for their live battling and their live showcasing that use the sound or use it really, really well, other than guys like, I say like Inertia. It comes to mind immediately. Now, the issue that this sound has, or at least I would say this sound in the context of the way it's used in the scene, which causes it to be really overrated, is if you get your vibration bass to honestly just be okay, a lot of people will think you're having like the dopest thing in the world. I'm not trying to hate on you. If you have a okay vibration bass, it's not a bad thing. Just keep working on it. The reason why I say that is a sound by itself is not the thing that should be impressing you anymore. And that's the issue with a lot of the sounds on this list. They just get hype because they are those sounds. You're going to see that a lot. Not because anybody that's using them is actually using them in a unique way or an inventive way, but they're just using them. And people are spamming in the chat or freaking out live, even if it's not actually being used really, really well. Now, call me biased, but I do believe that I have a unique perspective on this particular sound. One, as someone that it is their best bass, and the one that I would say I'm one of the most diverse at it. I don't want to claim anything, but I do think I use it in ways that a lot of people do not. This sound, I feel like I would be remiss to not include it because I know this sound is an overrated sound. And it's one of the reasons why I try to make sure I use it in ways that are refreshing and don't sound like everybody else. When I posted this question for, what do people think of the top 10 overrated sounds on my Instagram story, follow me on Instagram, vibration bass did come up a few times. Some people were like, oh, sorry, man, I know you like that sound, but it's kind of overrated. But they're right. They're right. A lot of people, they just spam it in like really dubstep beats and like rhythm stuff, and a lot of the patterns are the same, and it's just not really playing with the dynamics of it, not playing with the ranges. A lot of people, their vibration bass isn't really toned very well. They can't pitch it very well. They're kind of just using it because it's a really powerful bass and it sounds really nice texturally. The texture of the bass is a really nice and pleasurable sound to the ear, especially when it's clean, but it is also a sound that you have to really practice to make it flexible. There are not enough people that are making their own variations of this sound. It's been around in the scene for so long that the fact that almost every variation of vibration bass that I can think of that isn't just the plain vibration bass is it either being open or closed mouth, other than the variations that I've come up with myself, like the yoy bass that I do, or when I layer it with my vocal roll and things like that. Like, those are my variations, but other than those, I don't see people doing it in any other way but their mouth being open or closed. So let's move on to the next one on this list after that elongated soliloquy on vibration bass. So at number 9, we have the ever so iconic Random Words. Chocolate. 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 What are they selling? I really just did that. Now, in some ways, this sound, this sound could be actually considered to not really be that overrated, but the reason why I do consider it to be overrated is because it's like a plague. Every time I go on Discord, I hear it, and I hate it because it'll be some beatboxer that I've actually seen around, for a little while, and I know that they've heard high level beatboxing and that they've shown the potential to really go. Like, I've heard some crazy people that I would say are raw skill wise better than me, have all these crazy fills and these crazy drops, but in between them, they're just like, yep, bob your head, yep, bob your head. I'm like, don't just say words. Sure, words help you connect to your audience, and it adds a different layer to your routine or your freestyle or whatever. Sure, I'm not knocking the use of words. It's how you use the words. You want to make your stuff more memorable. You want to have at least something people can remember, and just saying something random is not going to do it. Your favorite routines aren't just random words. They have, you know, sometimes entire verses before the drops. They have hooks. Some of them are covers and remixes of popular songs. They're not just random words in between intros, build-ups, and drops. So even though it's a sound that I feel like is understandable, and not really, it's really a sound, it's more like a way of beatboxing, but it's understandable the way it's used because so many people are newer to the scene, because the scene has really, really exploded over the past 5 years. So a lot of people are still cultivating who they are as beatboxers, and they're still figuring certain things out. So when they're trying to figure out how to routine build and things like that, it's understandable why they would use random words and not really try all that hard to craft something and actually write something that has some form of like actual significance, or at least something of them in it, not just random words, like something that puts their stamp on that beat with the words that they're saying. You don't even have to say much. Like my boy Coldness, he'll do a beat, but when he says, what you gonna do in the war dog barking, that's him. That's him coming out. That's not just random words. So it's about to go down when he says that. There's a memorable feeling attached to it because it's not just something random, and it is placed the way it's placed, and it's used the way it's used. Yeah, that's number 9. Now number 8, we have snore bass. Yeah. I hate this sound. It's not necessarily like I get upset whenever I hear it used. Like, it's really hard to make the sound clean. Very, very hard. I can only think of about 3 people off the top of my head that have snore basses that I've heard at least live that actually sound nice, and especially because of it being on mic and the sound systems and things like that, they actually hit pretty well, and they don't make my ears want to bleed. Now, as you could imagine, the issue with this sound is it's used as a bass that is spammed because it's relatively easy to do, but it's hard to get polished. So a lot of beatboxers, especially for a certain amount of time, I would say a few years ago, this sound would be definitely higher on the list if it was still being used like it was back then. Like, I'll say around like the 2017 to 2018, around that era, wow, it was everywhere. This particular sound, because it's so easy, everybody snorted like once in their life when they're got something in their nose or whatever. It's not a hard sound to learn how to do. The issue is you sound like a bodily function. So what happens is you have a lot of people that need a sound to hit those lower registers, to try and make it sound heavy, whatever beat they're doing. And because it's an easy sound to do, they just, and it's just, I I don't like it. I don't like it. This is my list. If y'all don't like it, make your own list. You know, this is my list of overrated sounds. This is why I consider sound to be overrated. This is just easy to do and it hits the low registers, but it doesn't sound good and people just spam it all the time. So yeah, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you actually do agree. Let me know if there's sounds that you feel like I should have put on here. But let's move on to number 7. Number 7 is, I would say, one of the OG overrated sounds. Click rolls. I'm not that great at them, but I never really bothered to really train them. But one thing I know for a fact is after guys like Kim, Big Ben, and a few others really use those sounds to really shake some buildings, it's still being used to this day like that. I don't remember who, but I'm very confident I heard someone that wasn't one of those two people at GBB on the live stream do a type beat, and the crowd was still screaming to this day.
To this day.
You can do that sound in the same way it's been being used for years. And as long as you have it down to a certain extent, if you're able to hit notes just low enough and it sounds just clean enough, it's as if people either don't care that it's honestly not that original and you're just kind of copying a format that, you know, your OGs really started and you're not really doing anything original with it, though there are definitely a good amount of people in the scene that have found more unique ways to use it. I would say someone like Hiss comes to mind with really unique ways to use click rolls, at least more diverse and things like that, really mixing it up. If you want to hear people that are using these sounds in unique ways, you can definitely find them. And honestly, in the comments, I'm going to have a list of links to videos that show beatboxers using each of these sounds on this list. Well, maybe not each of them, but possibly, because some of these are almost goofy, just like the random words. But you'll see a list of beatboxers that use these sounds in more unique and original ways. And that can maybe give you some ideas, but don't rip them off. Do your own thing. Just use them as inspiration. Be like, oh, I can maybe try doing it in this genre because they're doing it in that genre, but maybe do it in my own way. Or because they're using this sound at this tempo, and instead of trying to go for the lowest of low notes, they're actually trying to hit more highs and mids and really playing with the dynamic range of that sound. Maybe I can try playing with the dynamic range of the sound and figuring out something cool on my own. Don't copy them, because that's what causes stagnation in the scene. If you want the scene to keep growing, you all have to inject you into it. You can't keep injecting copies of other people. If you want the scene to grow, be yourself. But yeah, so back to click rolls. They're honestly a really good sound to have in your sound set. The way certain people have used them with zippers, like Hiss I mentioned. You know, there are some really different ways you can use it if you so choose to, but I constantly hear it being used in that one way, which is basically just copying our OGs. So yeah, click rolls. So we're at number 6, and this sound probably would have been higher on the list. And honestly, if I make a prediction, which I'm going to, if I was to do this list in a year or so, based on the trends that I'm seeing, it's probably going to be ranked even higher. But it would have been ranked higher today if it was being used as often as it was a few years ago. And that sound is the sucker punch. So yeah, this sound is a sound that I have a frustration with. The reason why I have a frustration with this sound is because those that know, you know what? Any of y'all that know this sound, anyone that knows that sound, knows who that is, that's Slizzer, knows what video that is, knows that was directly responsible for that sound blowing up in the scene. Because the way he placed his sucker punch in that wild card, it's like the next day I hop online and the whole chat's just just spamming. When that sound first came into the scene, the only way it was used for a while was, and a lot of people just ran with it. There's certain people that literally became champions just copying him whenever they would use it. If you know, you know. But I digress. So number 5, we have polyphonic voice. Mine is absolutely terrible. I'm not going to give the internet fresh meme content. Not today, at least. So you will not be hearing me do it. But it's the more airy kind of. That's all you're getting from me. That sound, I would say, really definitely blew up, after the iconic Alexinho 2H battle, even though the polyphonics that were used during that, especially, in 2H's case, even though Alexinho did counter it, was more of the, yeah, as you just heard, there's your meme content. Mine sounds more like Old Man Dying than 2H or Alexinho, because I'm not good at those. But honestly, it's a sound that is a really cool sound, and I can't really pinpoint a specific person other than them that really caused it to expand so rapidly, because I feel like a lot of people just started doing it out of nowhere and just throwing it into stuff. And yeah, but recently, for sure, Stitch is responsible for a little bit of its resurgence because of his now iconic GB wildcard. Feels like nothing. The use of that sound while like singing and adding it into melodies has really helped shape out the sound sets of a lot of people's sound kits. In all honesty, it's a sound that I was kind of torn about putting on this list, but it's also why it's not in like the top 3, because I feel like there's enough people that are using it in their own ways, and there's so many different kinds of polyphonics. There's inward polyphonics, there's the ones that I showed earlier that I can't do. Technically, even overtones are a polyphonic. The issue with polyphonic voice, especially the more airy polyphonic voice, is when it's used, it's honestly often used in like a so they'll do one note of melody in a different kind of sound, or just a normal like humming like head voice or chest voice, whatever, and they'll do the other part of the sound and they'll do the next note in the melody in polyphonic, and that is how so many people use it nowadays. It's just like polyphonic, 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 polyphonic. I'm not against it. It's just like it's a pattern, and it's harder for me to really appreciate the sound when it's like I've heard it being used before. That's why I really appreciate people like Warlet, who will throw the sound in when it comes to melodies, but her ability to sing with that jump, bruh. Everybody go follow Whirl on Instagram. All right, top 4, speedrun time. This one is going to be pretty obvious for a lot of people. They might be a little surprised that it's not top 3, but you'll see why. And that is double voice. Yeah, everybody knows. After Shogo, after the whole. Yeah, it's just everybody started using it that way. And then it's just used like a. Only the most like controlled people actually will use it like that, or they actually like will pitch it along with a melody and continue to evolve it instead of just kind of doing it like a. That a lot of people doing just their drops. I know that sounds so great in your ears, doesn't it? Yeah, that's double voice. I don't really have much else to say about that. Everybody uses it the same way. And it's just like, Shogo existed, did that, and then you notice after a while he basically not necessarily stopped using it in his sound set, but he used it significantly less, and he really had to figure out different ways of using it because everyone was copying him. Everyone. Ah, yes, top 3, the Holy Grail. Number 3, tech spam. So tech spam is just, if you know, you know, but essentially it is just throwing in as many of your percussive sounds as possible without actually, making them coherent, making sure they actually are coming out cleanly. Uh, are you even making sure a kick is coming out while you're spamming all of that tech? Because it all kind of just sounds like differently pitched snares. Because they can't even get their kicks to come out clearly because they're just trying to go as fast as possible. And you had guys like, of course, Alem. You had guys like Skiller. And then online, you really had guys like Zero. There's so many people that just change the game with their tech, and it's just like, all right, y'all got that, because I'm not a technical beatboxer. I have like a few combos here and there, but I am not a technical beatboxer. One thing I do know is I know what clean sounds are, and so many people saw those beatboxers that were doing well using their technicality, and they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna throw all my percussive sounds into as short of a time span as possible. Be like, I'm the fastest in the world. Look at me, and none of those sounds are clean, and they expect to win battles. At the very least, get praise on an internet server for a few minutes, and then fade back into some form of obscurity, even though it doesn't really matter what people say on the Discord server. But I digress. Tech spam is just, it's not like everybody would use it the exact same way in terms of doing the exact same combos, but it was using it in the exact same way in the sense of, instead of actually spacing it out and placing it to where it actually hits and making sure everything that's in it while you're using it is hitting well, and what you're trying to get across is actually coming across really well, it was kind of just used as like spamming your special in a fighting game. Like, you don't use any other combos, you just spam your grab and Tekken, like that's what tech spam is. Tech spam is spamming your grab and Tekken. All right, number 2, we have the ever so iconic inward bass. Mine is atrocious, at least my traditional inward basses. I have a little something cooking, you know what I'm saying? I got a little OG variation cooking up. It's okay, y'all hear it soon. But the traditional inward bass, man. Shout out to OGs like Marcus. If you don't know, educate yourself. If it wasn't for Marcus, guys like Vocoder wouldn't be where they're at in terms of with that particular sound, because you got to have those OGs that come before that kind of really set the standard. They set the bar, and you got to figure out how to raise it. That's our job. Every generation's job is to raise the bar. All right. So you have guys now in this generation. Actually, no, before you even get to this generation, you even had people busting out their own unique inwards, like 2H. Like, oh my lord, 2H's inward bass is like an eldritch horror coming to life out of his esophagus. So my camera died as I was talking about 2H's wonderful eldritch horror of a throat. I'll just continue and just basically say, yeah, inward bass has become a sound that it's used the same way as the double voice, especially after the Shogo reckoning, in terms of how every couple of years there's either a different person or it's the same people that everybody that's doing inward bass, basically, if you were to hop on a server or just listen to your average beatboxer, they're all kind of using it that way. And when I first got into the scene, I would say a lot of people were either using it like Vocoder, who was then known as Article, or they were using it as kind of the same way as Inertia was using it, or there were a few people that were using it in kind of the way that Marcus was using it. And fast forward to nowadays, and it's like a mixture of the two I mentioned before with Vocoder and Inertia, and now definitely I would say like D-Lo and his like more inward bass. Yeah, in terms of even like the genres they're used in a lot, it's just like a lot of people are using them in trap beats like Inertia. A lot of people are using them in rhythm beats and stuff like that, like Vocoder. It's just like, come on guys, it's the same thing as a lot of the sounds on this list. These sounds are dope. When you get them to a certain point and you really hone them, they can really be great sounds in your sound set, but you have to use them in original ways. If not, you're just going to be really just spamming an overrated kind of way of doing a sound. So before we get into number 1, we have an honorable mention. Now, some people might think this honorable mention should be number 1. Let me explain why it's not. And that is the lip roll. Out of all the sounds on this list, it is probably the one sound that has become the most foundational sound in the scene, because it transcended overratedness, and it just became like, it's a standard in the scene now because of the way it can be used to hit lower frequencies, and there's so many different variations of it. Especially the variations are probably the biggest factor for why this is not actually at number 1, and it's actually just an honorable mention, because there's like the normal, right? There's the really heavy one, then there's the real like sub, There's hollows. There's the outward. People will use that. That was a thing for a while in the scene, doing beats like that. There's so many different ways of using it. And guys like Wally are just like, they've wrapped a solid grip around that sound. And even guys like Kendo and doing like the, there's enough variations in this sound. I think out of all the sounds on this list, this sound has the most variations and the most diverse ways of use in the scene because of how foundational it's become. Rather it's in like house beats, rather it's in trap beats, rather than just old school like boom bap hip hop beats. Right? No matter what genre, it fits. You just have to figure out how you're going to use it, because it almost always sounds good once you get it to a certain extent. Once you polish the sound enough, you don't have to be Napalm level or Wally level or Ballsy level, you know, because Ballsy was doing it for a while before Napalm really blew it up, but Napalm's use of it's really what blew it up. And I don't know if there's many people that are even close to being as clean as Ballsy in anything, because Ballsy's probably the cleanest beatboxer on the planet. I should do a list on that. Lord have mercy, that dude's insane. But you don't have to be as clean as these people. You just have to have it decent. And it's probably going to be okay in your sound set. It's probably going to be okay in your beat. That's why this sound is honorable mention and is not actually an official entry on the list, and not a number one, even though some people may not agree. And if you disagree, tell me why. So number one is a sound I feel like a lot of people did not see coming. Because it's not a sound. It's a build-up. Yeah, that. I dare you. Someone, I challenge you. Go onto any beatboxing Discord server. Go into a jam channel. Sit there for 10 minutes. It'll happen in 3. It'll happen in 3. It is probably the most overused way of building up a beat before a drop I have ever heard in my life. It goes really right in hand with the random words. You're trying to add the constant changing in like the pitch of your voice to be the build. You're like, like that's not how you build something. Building something is about controlling energy. For instance, you're playing with what's there, and you have to build what's there. You have to construct it. That's what building up is. You have to construct it. You can't just raise it. You have to construct it. That's how you actually do a good build up. And that was just off the top of my head. That wasn't even that great of a build up. It was just not that stale cookie cutter. There was some kind of interaction with the energy beyond just simply trying to raise your voice or slightly up the pitch. And because of how standard that way of building up sounds is, because build-ups are basically a key part of every beat done ever, especially now in beatboxing, I think it's undeniable for that sound or that, you know, way of beatboxing to be at number one on this list. So if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed seeing me alternate my hands back and forth from holding up this little camera with my arm because my other camera died, hit subscribe, like the video, tell me what you like down below. And if you have any ideas for a video, a sound you want me to cover for a tutorial or anything like that, let me know down below, and I'll see you guys when I see you guys.